Saturday edition of the Call Up, and we have a fun one today because we're going to be talking about some standout pitchers over the last week or so, and then we have an interview with Cardinals prospect Thomas Saggese, who Jack got to talk to when he was out in Indy. And Jack, I don't want to give you credit for this, but pretty much since you guys have had this conversation, Saggese's been going pretty crazy. Of course, a top 100 prospect for us, right on the top 60 range. I think we're probably a little bit higher, but I think you'll start to see why when you hear from him, but also when you start to look at how he's been swinging it the last week or so.
It was a great conversation, and it was a conversation that we were having when he was sub 200, and it was like 8 games in, sure, but I mean, like at the end of the day, this guy was, kind of slow out of the gates, but he was still so calm, so level. He gives off the Southern California vibe, and you will totally pick that up. And this guy, I mean, he's been surrounded by some really talented teammates, and this guy is exceptionally talented in his own right. He talks about the defensive versatility too. He's playing a lot of short right now, and he was not doing that last year. So we get into that, and then his natural feel for elevating. He was a very fun conversation.
Yeah, and we'll dive a little bit more into what he's been doing lately when we lead right into that interview. But just a few things that he has been doing well as of late that have him, already up over an 800 OPS. That's the crazy thing about the early parts of the season is you can feel like you're off to such a slow start, and then you have 2 good games, and all of a sudden your numbers are right back where they need to be. So we'll talk a little bit about the nice stretch that Saggese has had when we lead into that conversation. But right now, we have some pitchers to talk about, and a couple of them were guys that we had discussed briefly, or actually a couple more in depth on the bonus episode that I just put out. But I did want to get into a couple of those guys, as well as some others who we haven't given a ton of airtime to, and we probably should, based on the subsequent start they had. Like there was one that was good, and you're like, okay, and then they have another that's pretty good, and you're like, all right. And then once it's a third, even if they weren't on your radar, you got to circle back now and talk about those guys. So there's a few of those that we are going to talk about here. Who do you want to start with, Jack? Because we kind of have a wide range. And also, before I forget, we're mostly going to talk about guys that are further off, because Monday's episode is going to be a kind of imminent big leaguer type of episode. So we're going to be talking about a lot of those upper level arms, several bats that we think could be getting an opportunity at the big leagues pretty soon, and then some that may be blocked, and try to assess that situation. So these guys are mostly going to be either lower levels or just guys that, are not really imminent big leaguers.
So 3 starts, 15 innings, 5 hits, no earned runs, 24 punch outs, and 4 walks. Aram, who is George Klassen?
Yeah, so Klassen's become a very popular, I think, breakout, and I think just like helium name, because he was viewed as kind of a project when the Phillies took him, and I think in the 6th round down in Minnesota. Didn't make his debut last year. What was it, 7th?
6th round. Yep.
6th
Minnesota.
I think he didn't make his debut last year because he was banged up, and then emerges this year healthy first and foremost. But secondly, he's averaging 97 with his fastball, and it's 97 with run, and it's a heavy pitch. So he's just been overpowering low A hitters with it so far. You mentioned the numbers. I mean, just dominating. And I think we'll probably see him get bumped up to high A relatively soon here. I see why a lot of people are excited about him. And again, when you're averaging 97 with ride and run like that, like it's really impressive. The curveball, when he's commanding it, looks like it has a chance to be disgusting. There is a lot of effort in the delivery. And that's something that I'm a little bit concerned about. When he starts to face more challenging competition, they start to grind out ABs more. You can't overpower just with the fastball quite as much. How consistently are you going to command those secondaries, those 2 breaking balls? And usually when you have those higher effort deliveries, it's a little bit tougher to command those breaking balls. So just something to monitor. But so far, just with the fastball, being able to go back to that when the breaking balls aren't there, pretty much anytime he falls behind, he just can throw 2-3 fastballs in a row. And it's such a good pitch for him that he's just blowing it by hitters. It's really impressive. There's a lot to like. There's a lot to be excited about. But I do think that there's still a fair amount of reliever risk that may not be shown in low A right now, because he can pretty much just give you the glove flip fastball and overpower guys, which is a testament to him, but also is something to monitor as he gets up to high A, double A.
He's also 22 years old in low A. And, you wonder about the level of not buy-in from the Phillies because they're clearly bought in, but you wonder about the level of babying that will follow because they took a high school first-round pick in Painter and shot him up through the minor leagues like a rocket ship because he passed at every level across 6-start spans. So they did that with a 19-year-old first-round pick. A 22-year-old sixth-round pick, you think you can cut that start number from 6 to like 3. I would expect him to go up at any point to high A. And then if he's killing in high A for 4 starts, you could see him go up. I think this is a guy that like the Phillies will have no problem pushing. And will he hit an innings limit at some point? Yeah, I'm sure. But like, let him get as far up with success in the minor leagues as humanly possible because, frankly, like it feels like they're playing with house money with a guy like George Klassen.
Absolutely. And I think it's definitely good scouting success already. But you look at the velocity, even in college as well, when the numbers were not as good, I think, as the stuff may indicate. There were several outings where he was averaging pretty much 97, 98. He had an 105 pitch outing where he's averaging 98 as well. And he gave up some runs, in those games. So I know I'm just interested to see how different he is from that pitcher last year. And I know he was a little banged up, but I think there's clearly some more pitchability to him now. And I think there's a little bit better fastball command and characteristics. I know when I see like the community start to like latch onto a guy, like the prospect, the fantasy community, whatever. And then it becomes this like competition of like, who's the most in on this guy. And then we end up kind of pushing a guy maybe a little bit too much, a little bit too early. And I think that might be what happens with Klassen a little bit. I think Austin Charles was that perfect example, who, by the way, is swinging it pretty well right now in the Royal system. I think Klassen could get up to high A and do more of the same. And then, we can kind of put that to bed a little bit. But I do think that if the secondaries aren't there, that fastball may not play quite the same way against better competition. That said, it's an easy plus heater. He gets a lot of ground balls, and that helps a lot too, and takes some pressure off of the swing and miss with the secondaries. But I think that curveball could be really damn good, and we're seeing flashes of that already.
Yeah. Another guy, as we jump to the Cardinals system, actually, 23-year-old, 4th-round pick out of Stanford last year, left-hander Quinn Mathews. And if I'm not mistaken, Paul Skeens was second in all of college baseball last year in innings pitched to Quinn Mathews, who threw 124 2/3 innings.
Yeah.
How many pitches did he throw in that super regional, or was it a regional where he threw like 150 pitches or something?
It was 156, if I'm not mistaken. If I remember correctly, it was 156.
So this cat was a pitchability 4-year lefty at Arizona that threw 156 pitches in an outing.
Against Stanford, right?
For Stanford. But he was a 4th-round pick at St. Louis. He didn't throw it all last year, understandably so, because he threw 124 innings by the end of June. But so far this year in low A as a 23-year-old, so he is, older than the average age pitcher in low A. 12 innings, 4 hits, only earned run has come on a homer, 25 punch-outs in 12 innings, 9 walks. This is not the Quinn Mathews that was at Stanford whatsoever. What's different?
So this was one of the texts I was most excited to send you because I knew you wouldn't believe it. Quinn Mathews was just a good 4-year college pitcher. He was definitely someone that had some professional intrigue, and he was always assumed to be going in the first 5 rounds because he's a high floor lefty that you figured could potentially be a 5-starter for you, but at the very least, it's just a good depth arm to have in your organization. And the Cardinals love those types. They draft the elevated versions of those pitchers in the first round all the time. We saw it with Michael McGreevy. But what shocks me with Mathews is he emerges this year looking like a totally different arm. He was averaging 91 to 92. Some outings he would average like 92 and a half. And I understand that a lot of his outings for Stanford, he was going 115, 120 pitches, and then 156 the one time as well. But even in the shorter spurts, like we had 65, 66 pitch outings from him where he's averaging 92 and a half. So far this year, he's averaging 95 on the fastball, and he's touching 97. So that's 2 to 3 ticks up. And it's not like he's throwing 30 pitch outings, right? It's not like we're taking a guy that was throwing 113 pitches and now he's throwing 30 pitches. We have samples of him throwing 65 pitch outings in college where he's averaging 92. Now, 74 pitches the first time out, averages 94.2 miles per hour. 78 pitches the second time out this year, averages 95.1. 83 pitches the third time out and averages 95 on the dot. So this is an uptick, clearly. The other side of it was like, okay, he's 6'4", he's a lefty. There's an uptick, but like, what does the shape look like? You know, is this just going to kind of be a stock fastball? No, it's not. It's a below average release because of the 3/4 release point. He gets pretty down on the mound. He gets average extension and, you know, a 5'6" release height, 18 inches of vert. That's above average characteristics. So you have above average characteristics, above average velocity from a 6'4" lefty. No wonder he's blowing it by guys. He is doing it in low A. It is important to note. For whatever reason, him and Chase Davis are still teammates in low A. But this is a different Quinn Mathews, man. The other aspect of it is the changeup was viewed as kind of like his one above average pitch that, you know, that may translate well to professional ball. He still has that changeup and it's been good for him, but he's added this mid-80s slider that is really playing up from that release point. And now you've got a true 3-pitch mix with the fastball being better, the slider being a legitimate pitch and still having that changeup. Quinn Mathews is a real prospect, man. Like this has to be my biggest surprise in the early, and we'll probably do an episode on that too. Like biggest surprises. It's too early now, but pitching, you can kind of dive into it a little bit earlier. This is my biggest surprise. And judging on your reaction to my text to you, I'd imagine that this is one of your biggest surprises this far too.
You know what this is? So cross-sport analogy. I'm going to football. I feel like I usually go to basketball, but I'm going to football now. You remember when Stetson Bennett got invited to New York as a Heisman finalist? It was a culmination in his career. Like he was not one of the 3-4 best players in America that year, but he was, you know, like, oh yeah, the Stetson Bennett story. It's great. It's like if Stetson Bennett got drafted and then showed up to camp looking like Anthony Richardson in terms of like a skill set. This is a 180 from who Quinn Mathews was. Pitchability lefty, fastball changeup. And the fastball wasn't good at Stanford. And now he's like, I'm going to outstuff the shit out of you. It's insane. Like this is a totally different human being that I think the Cardinals drafted in the 4th round. And he is fitting the bill of the modern pitcher now more than he really ever had.
I'm pretty sure he didn't exceed 95 miles per hour last year, at least with the pitches I'm able to track. And he's averaging 95 miles an hour now. Like think about that's crazy to not even top at what you're now averaging within 8 months. My only concern is, you know, sometimes you see that big uptick and that's a lot for the body to handle quickly. The good news is that Quinn Mathews overall has already put his body, I think, to the test. And like, you know, he was throwing softer, but he's throwing 156 pitches. I'm not a doctor, but I'd imagine 95 miles an hour, but it's managed workload at 70 to 80 pitches. Probably offsets. I don't know. But like anytime you see that big uptick, I always, you know, get a little bit nervous about the workload, but you know, you just can't live scared anymore. I think that's more than clear. That said, like I am interested to see how they manage his workload after what happened last year. Now with an uptick, you know, I feel like we see these stories where guys have this uptick, they look amazing. And then unfortunately, you know, something happens. So I hope that the Cardinals are somewhat cautious with him, but it seems like he's already stretched out to 80 pitches, and that's fine. I'm just interested to see what his workload limitations may be because they might look at 120 innings, like you said, one of the most used pitchers in college baseball, and say, oh, well, we can get him back up there. I think they can, but I hope they don't push it too far beyond that because I think they may have something here. The one thing that is interesting is that I think because the stuff is so much louder, he's still working to harness it. But we saw what happens when he harnesses it. Second start of the year was 5 innings, 1 hit, no runs, no walks, 11 Ks. But the other 2 outings are a combined 7 innings, 14 Ks, 2 runs, 1 earned, but 9 walks. So just something to monitor. I think Quinn Mathews is still figuring out how to harness his newfound electric stuff. But I'm intrigued, and I think this is a guy that may be the biggest climber in the Cardinals farm system this year if he keeps it up.
Absolutely. And like, I wish I had a better way to build off of what you were saying about increased velo and like, you know, hopefully the workload, it kind of offsets. But like We don't know. He might blow out. He might not. Like that's the point that I've gotten to now where it's like, oh, he's throwing harder. Yeah, he might blow out. But like he's throwing less pitches. Yeah, he might not blow out, but he still might blow out. We just don't know, which sucks. But welcome to baseball and welcome to pitching in 2024. Ben Kudrna with the Kansas City Royals is the next guy that we wanted to bring up. 3 starts have spanned 14 2/3. So he's being pushed a little bit as a 21-year-old in high A. 14 2/3, 2 earned runs, has punched out 19 and walked 5. He had an excellent start last time out. Kudrna is a guy that I know you really liked right away. 2nd round pick in 2021. Last year, he was so-so, like 108 innings from a 20-year-old between low A and high A. But he really got hit hard in his 40 innings in high A. What are you seeing now that's different from him that might have been a source of struggle for him in high A last year?
Yeah, I think just a little bit more confidence. He's always had this stuff. I was surprised to see him get hit the way that he did last year. I understand the fastball's not great, and we're going to talk a lot about that in the Imminent Big Leaguers episode on Monday, especially when we talk about Sam Robertson and how you can manage that. But Kudrna's fastball is definitely better than Sam's, and but it is pretty stock. And I think that was the problem for him, was trying to fill up the zone enough, falling behind in counts, having to go to that fastball more, was resulting in him getting hit pretty hard. Whereas the slider and the changeup are really good pitches for him. And I think our big league offerings both could potentially be well above average to plus. So it's okay, if my fastball is average, I have 2 above average to plus offerings. The difference maker at that point is command. And the fastball is good enough to where if he hits his spots, I think he can be successful. I think that's exactly what he's doing. He's getting ahead now a little bit more, and it's allowing him to use both of those secondaries and sequence a little bit more effectively too. I think what he's also seeing is that, we talked about this on the show a lot, Jack, and I'm curious what you're seeing in AAA, but right on right or left on left, same-handed changeups are such an underutilized weapon, because traditionally it was just always, oh, you don't want to throw a changeup to the same-handed guy. Well, the hitter that you're facing knows that. And when your fastball is not good, if I'm a right-handed hitter, I know he's got a good slider, but I'm pretty much, just approached to shutting down anything that starts middle away and zeroing in on a fastball, not going to miss that. And, if he locates 3 sliders, you tip your cap, but you're able to kind of cut it down to 2 pitches. Are you seeing more like same-handed changeups? Paul Skeens doesn't count, but are you seeing more same-handed changeups in the upper minors? Because I think that's a trend we're going to see in baseball continue to change. And I think it's a very archaic way of thinking that same-handed changeups can't work.
Yeah, I agree with you. What I will say is the guys that you see throw same-handed changeups have an arsenal that mandates that they do. So, like, I just watched Simeon Woods-Richardson throw a couple of same-handed changeups, and he's working on that slider, and the slider actually looks pretty good. It's firmer, and it's in the 87, 88 range, building off that 93 that he's got. So, like, that's how he would really attack right on right. But obviously, a changeup has been a huge part of his arsenal, and he's still using it. So a lot of guys that I'd say like their go-to secondary pitch is a changeup, they will go to it. But you still have like kind of the cookie cutter type guys that are same-handed, they're going fastball breaking ball, and then opposite-handed, they're going fastball changeup. What I will say is I think you're going to see more same-handed changeups because there's more of an emphasis placed on changeup movement now than ever before. Before, it was really a taste breaker when it came to separation of velocity. And it was, okay, I throw my fastball at 92. I've got a changeup at 85. It's going to mimic. It's going to look similar. Now, you can view a changeup as a pitch that dives under a barrel. And is that a grip thing? Everybody's been like, we've been throwing circle changeups since like what, the 1940s, I'm sure, 1950s, but there are different iterations of the changeup. Like you look at Chris Paddock and the Vulcan changeup, right? Like there are a lot of people that have figured out ways to get horizontal movement, get vertical drop on their change. And I think the more we lean into that, the movement profile of the changeup, the more you're going to see same-handed changeups.
Well, and especially like you talk about the way the Arsenal can kind of, cater to that. The thing is Kudrna, again, the fastball is not great, especially to righties. Like righties hit the fastball well and historically have. So if they're looking fastball kind of out over the plate and slider away, and you start to get them looking out away, especially when they're behind in the count as a righty, you're going to start looking for anything working away from you. And then all of a sudden, he buries that changeup with 16 inches of horizontal down and in on you. It's going to catch you off guard. And that's just all he needs. That's all he needs as just like a change of pace weapon, especially in a battle if a guy's fouling a bunch off and you just need another way to put him away. I think a perfect example of this is he's thrown 15 changeups right on right so far this year. 6 have resulted in strike 3.
There you go.
So, I mean, that's impressive through 3 starts. Like, it's not like he's throwing it a ton, but he brings it out at the right time now. And before it was, I can't put him away. He keeps spoiling the slider, hoping I can blow 95 by him. Sometimes I will. Sometimes it's a home run or whatever. And now it's, I've got this other, kind of ace in my back pocket, and I can drop this in there when a guy is on my fastball slider sequence. That's all I think he really needed.
So that's the thing. You want to keep it in your back pocket too. You don't want to deploy it enough for it to become predictable and part of the scout. You want it to be that sneak attack pitch, that element of surprise pitch. And that's what some of the best pitchers in baseball do. Like, notice Spencer Strider showcased a good changeup last year. He only threw it, 5-6% of the time? Like, every great pitcher has a taste breaker. And even if it's a good taste breaker, they still keep it in the back pocket as a taste breaker. Because if you throw your taste breaker too much, then it becomes part of your arsenal. It just becomes part of the scout, and guys will be ready for it. So I think in the early goings especially, he may be benefiting from it not really being part of the scout. And it's like, where the hell did that come from?
Yep, and it's a great pitch. So that's the other aspect too. Even though it's not his best, it's a good pitch that should be thrown more, even right on right. And I think that's been a big part of his success. So good times with the Royals right now. You look at just what they're doing at the big league level. You start to look at the system and some of the way that these guys are developing. And now I'm excited for Kansas City Royal fans, and hopefully Mazzucato can get rolling and see how he does. And the rest of the farm system. Blake Mitchell's been swinging it pretty well out of the gate. That's a guy that we'll check in on in a little bit, but it's been cool to see what he's doing. We love Ramon Ramirez. So exciting days, I think, to be a Kansas City Royals fan.
Would you say exciting days to be an Atlanta Braves fan too?
I mean, that's every day.
Yeah. So why do you need Owen Murphy to be this good? Owen Murphy with the Atlanta Braves, 3 starts, 17 innings, 3 earned, punched out 27, walked 6 in 17 innings of work. Owen Murphy really struggled last year with a lot of hard contact, and he was punching out a good number of guys. He really wasn't walking many people. 89 2/3 last year between low A and high A. 113 punch outs, 32 walks. But it resulted in a 4.7 ERA because he was getting hit and hit hard. He's limiting that hard contact right now. And is that what has him really taken off?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of everything. And we had him as a breakout guy in the written article. I added a few other breakout pitching prospects that we put out in justbaseball.com. And Murphy was one of the late additions. I think it's just a little bit of everything. So he's a guy that it's low 90s fastball with crazy vert. I mean, he's getting 19 to 20 inches of vert from a 5.6 release height. Like, that's elite. It's that much vert from that release height is pretty much adjacent to Christian Javier. Javier throws it harder, and that's why he's had some of the best stretches we've seen out of some big league pitchers in the last few years. Of course, that profile with a high IVB fastball and a lack of third pitch comes with volatility. But we know when Javier's on, it's crazy. But what would you say is the most important variable for pitchers like Christian Javier?
Command, right?
Yeah. And that, because you're a 2-pitch guy, you're a fastball invisible type where it's just getting crazy ride that is beyond what hitters are used to. But if you're always working from behind, hitters will just start to try to cheat for that thing. And it becomes a little bit more.
Then you're forced to kind of tug it down too. Like, you want to be able to climb the ladder over the course of an at-bat. So I'm actually going to get more specific fastball command over anything.
Yes. Well, and here's the thing is, and I think if your fastball commands, I think it's still both though, because if I don't respect your slider right now, even though it's a good pitch, but you're not locating it, like when Javier is not locating that slider, you could get by with pinpoint fastball command. But what are the odds that your fastball command is going to be, pinpoint? when on those days where the slider's not there. So I think it's a combination of both. The reason why Javier survives is like, even when the slider's not there, is because of that fastball command. But I think it's also, you got to respect the slider so much. And Owen Murphy this year, 76% strike rate on the slider. You got to respect that pitch then, because not only is it a good pitch and it's pretty nasty, but he's able to spot it. He's able to throw it early in counts, later in counts. He's going to mix it up. And then the other thing is, he's a half tick harder this year. And I think that makes a big difference when you're 20 inches avert from a 5.6 release. So now he's averaging 91, but I think getting a little bit more and kind of pops of a bit more velocity wise, and just the command overall being better. It felt like last year just was a lot of pitching from behind. And I feel like he wasn't elevating the fastball as much as he should. So I don't even know if he knew what his like strengths truly were. I don't know if he leaned into it enough, where now you're seeing him set it up well. You kind of mentioned the fastball command. That's where it really comes in, is like knowing how your fastball plays, how to set it up well. And so far, I mean, it's been an awesome pitch for him. Opponents overall are hitting $131, but 30% chase rate on his fastball, 15% swinging strike rate. And he's just filling up the zone or just right above it, which is just what you love to see. And he's also got a little bit more confidence in that taste-breaking curveball in the mid-70s to give a third speed and a third look. Just looks like a more complete and more well-rounded pitcher. And he always had the things that you can't really teach. And now you're seeing what happens when he has a little bit more velocity and a little bit more command. That last outing against Asheville, where he went 5 innings, 11 Ks, 2 earned runs, he averaged closer to 92 on the heater, which, he had not really done much, only a couple starts last year where he was averaging more than 91, and those were mostly shorter spurts. So I think the uptick in velocity with that shape is huge. And then just the confidence. He just seems like he's starting to realize what his stuff can do at the top of the zone.
So the big question, are they going to AJ him? Because AJ started in Rome last year, and he was great in Rome. And then he went to Mississippi, and he was great in Mississippi. And then he got the call. I think it was like 1 start in Gwinnett, and then he went up. I don't think they should. I don't think they will, because he's a first-round guy, and he really wasn't overwhelmingly successful in 23. But hell, man, like AJ wasn't that great in 2022. So I wonder where they're at, especially with Waldrop struggling in AA and with AJ struggling in AAA.
Yeah, I would think they don't. I think they were fast tracking AJ because of the pitch mix. He had so many different offerings. I think they thought that it would translate to the big leagues, and just the command held him back. Whereas an Owen Murphy, like, if he's not ready at 60% fastball usage, it's going to be bombs away. And I don't know if they want to do that to him. So I think they'll see it a little bit differently there with him. That said, nothing would shock me, because they might look at that fastball and say, hey, it could get swings and misses. Those vert guys, they usually translate decently well. But I hope they don't, because he is finally, I think, really settling in. And I think we can see him in double relatively soon. But I don't want to stunt this momentum and this development. There's just clearly a lot better feel to pitch here that he is building, and a lot more confidence within the zone. You don't want to stifle that by Pete Alonso clipping a fastball that's well located at the top of the zone, and now all of a sudden he's nibbling again.
Right. I'm totally with you. One more guy, and maybe the most successful for last at this point. Happy 23rd birthday, Adam Mazur. The former Iowa Hawkeye was born on April 20th, 2001. So happy birthday to you. Padres right-hander has been dynamite in San Antonio at this point. Through 3 starts, 16 innings, 8 hits, 1 run has come on a solo homer, 16 Ks, 2 walks in 16 innings. This is a guy that you can just shove up there, I think.
Yeah, don't tell AJ Preller that, though. Like then he'll be there.
Like, he's already seeing it. I guarantee you he's going to do it like next week.
I mean, but he is. I'm with you. Look, I don't think he's going to miss a ton of bats at the big league level, but I think he'll miss enough. He fills up the zone, and he's going to give you a good chance at a quality start every 5th day. And I think we're seeing that. I think we're also seeing that he's just way too polished for AA. The thing is like, this is another guy that I just wouldn't really want to put in the PCL, because the whole point of why he's so good, I think, is the confidence in the zone with several different pitches. 70% strike rate on the fastball, 77% strike rate on the slider, 60% 58% strike rate on the curveball and a 75% strike rate on the changeup. He is filling it up and mixing it up. And, you send a guy to the PCL and again, you make some good pitches that get out and you're kind of like, ugh, that's frustrating, right? And maybe can breed some bad habits. I think there's no need to move him from double. And I think when he gets the call up, it could probably just come straight from double A. I mean, the efficiency is what stands out to me. I think we talked about it briefly a week ago where like he almost had a Maddox over two starts where in 109 pitches, he was able to cover 11 innings. That's we were saying like almost more impressive than a Maddox. Obviously, it's more impressive to do it in one outing, but that's never going to be allowed in the minor leagues. So they give you 2 outings where you're only able to throw, let's assume he was capped at about 55 pitches and he got 1 extra in there. To be able to compile 11 innings when you're being capped at 50 pitches each outing is pretty crazy. So to get 5 innings in and 56 pitches and then get 6 innings in the next time out with 53 pitches is absurd. But also the command has just been absurd. Again, I wonder how much whiff there's going to be at the big league level, but I think there's clearly enough. He's striking out batters at a 30% clip so far. He's getting plenty of end zone whiff on the fastball, which is interesting because he's been sitting 95. That goes back to last year, but the shape kind of left a little bit to be desired. Seems like he's getting a little bit more life now. I mean, Jack, do you feel like Mazur could be a good big league starter this year?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. In the minor leagues. So in college, like this guy had a 4.25 ERA and 182 innings, right? So he's lowered that to a 2.49. But I want to go to walk rate in college versus the minor leagues. He was walking 3.5 hitters per 9 in college. What do you think his walk percentage is in the minor leagues? He's thrown 112 minor league innings.
In the entire minor leagues walk percentage?
He's punching out 23.5% of hitters.
I'm going to guess it's like 6%.
4.2%. Sure. In 112 innings, he's walked 19. He's seen 448 hitters. He's walked 19 of them. This guy has discovered something about his confidence in the strike zone, like you were saying, that he did not have in the Big Ten. Like, it's one thing if you don't have it in the SEC or even the ACC. But the Big Ten is like the 3rd or 4th. I'd say probably the 4th best conference in America when it comes to college baseball. If you don't have that confidence in the strike zone and you get to the minor leagues and you get shoved to high A and double right away and you open and double and you're walking 1.5 hitters per 9 in your first 112 minor league innings, you've got some shit to you. And like that guy's going to survive with San Diego.
The stuff has ticked up since college with the deep pitch mix and kind of the path that you set out. You know who I kind of thought of?
There are a couple guys that tick up. Who are you thinking of though?
It kind of reminds me of Tanner Bybee. And I'm not saying he's going to be quite as good because I think Bybee has, better fastball characteristics and, had better command in college and then just really saw that tick up. But I do see some similarities to Bybee there where I think, he can just be that guy that sees the uptick across his entire arsenal. The pitchability was there. He just didn't maybe trust the stuff as much. And now he's just filling up the zone with all these different pitches that have gotten better and just knows how to pitch. I do see some similarities with Bybee there, which I think, would bode really well for Mazur. I think it's a little bit of a lighter example. Like I think it's like 70% of a Bybee, but if you're 70% of a Bybee, you're a good big league starter.
Yeah, 160 2/3 innings at this point for Bybee. He's got a 3.19 in the big league.
Yeah. One last note on Mazur. He's given up 3 extra base hits this year. One is a home run to Caleb Roberts of the D-backs, 91.5 miles per hour, and it got out 367 feet. The other is a ground ball via Josh Lester at 82 miles per hour at -12 degrees. That was a double. And then another double at 98 miles an hour from Jordan Brewer. So that ball was actually hit hard. But that's the craziest part too. 3 extra base hits, and pretty much none of them were really hard hits. He's only oh my gosh, this is even crazier. He's only given up 7 batted balls, 95 miles per hour and above. Adam Mazur. That's nuts. 100 miles per hour and above.
And this year, he's seen 54 hitters and 3 batted balls like that.
That's crazy.